got to time it just right before you hit the beach. That's a wave, it's what it's called. All those boats coming in together is a wave. You've got to time it just right, because if that has a misfire on that ship, guess what happens? They get a misfire, they wait just a second, then they try it again. If it fires and you're already on the beach, you're going to have a bad day. So you have to account for all of that. So you've got planes that are coming over bombing. You've got ships sending in naval gunfire support. You've got the enemy up there, mines in the water, mines on the beach, machine gun nest. It is a violent, violent, violent activity. Next slide, please. This is a U.S. Navy hovercraft, LCAC-1. You can, right here is me flying LCAC-1 in that window right there. This craft doesn't really take the place of those boats that you saw before. It enhances what they do. This craft actually flies about 6 feet in the air above the air of the ground or the water. Okay? I can put, generally, you're probably wondering the size of it. I can put about 3 18-wheelers side by side. 3 minivans in the front and then another minivan in the back. These propellers are 12 feet in diameter. The air that's coming out of these bow thrusters is coming out roughly 350 miles per hour, 1 million cubic foot per second. So what happens here is we didn't have to stop at the beach like those other boats did. What we could do, we were primarily used for ship-to-shore movement. We'd hit the beach, come around behind the enemy across the desert in a cloud of dust. It'd scare them to death because they don't know what we are. All you see is a cloud of dust blowing up all this dust. We can't see anything. We'd go out there and fly formations, and I'll show you. Next slide, please. It's me right there in the front flying LCAC-1. You can see all these guys. We generally, before we'd hit the beach, we'd come up to a line abreast instead of a V formation. And at night, we'd fly a lot closer. During the Gulf War, we'd fly so close we could bump. But remember, we were, way back then, is just after these things were developed, a lot of people didn't understand how to use them. So we're out there flying in mined waters, no lights, no radio, no radar. We had stuff, but we had to turn it off because we didn't want the enemy to track us. So that's how we went in, and many times we might bump. Next slide. Cockpit. Looks like the cockpit out of a C-130, and it has about 3 times as much stuff down below decks. Next slide, please. This is LCAC going into the well deck right there. Now that's very deceptive. Generally, depending on the class of ship, you might have about 3 inches on each side to go in. And remember, you're moving up and down, you're pitching, you're rolling, you're yawing, and so is the ship. Next slide. We would work a lot with Marine Recon and Navy SEAL Team. We'd lower those ramps, bring SEAL Team on. We did a lot of ops with SEAL Team. That was one of our collateral duties. We would do insertions and extractions. We'd either pick them up at a certain point, sitting out in the middle of the ocean, so the ship could stay out there over the horizon in a safe location. We'd take SEAL Team in to do whatever the mission was at hand, and then we would come back and extract them, either on the beach or at a certain rendezvous point, and hopefully it wouldn't be a hot extraction, meaning under fire. Next slide. Now, one of the things we did, we were a very unique group of people. They said it was flying hovercraft, although we're only 6 feet in the air. But what we would do also is we had to be prepared for that craft to get blown out from under us. So we went through SOI, which is a modified School of Infantry at Camp Pendleton, California, is where we were stationed. So we would go up and go through the same weapons training that SEAL Team, the Marines would go, a modified weapons training, so that if we had to hit the beach. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Now, you'll see what we would do now, we had a different purpose. Our purpose was to fly the hovercraft in and get those troops in. Now, if the craft got shot out from under us, we would take up a perimeter. We would hide. And I'll tell you why. We weren't the guys like SEAL Team or Recon. Incredibly trained individuals, I know, because I worked with them a lot doing these ops. We had a different purpose, though. Our job was not to go out there and engage the enemy. They would never contact us on the beach after our craft was shot out from under us and say, go engage the enemy at this point. They're not going to do that. One, we weren't trained that much to do that. 2, our training was defensive. They spent millions of dollars to train us. Millions. They want us to come back, and it takes a year to train one of these guys, and it takes quite a bit of time before you actually get really proficient at flying a hovercraft. So we don't want you taxpayers to have to pay millions more to train new guys and take years to train them. We want those guys to hide, defend themselves at all costs, and then, next slide, they would be extracted as soon as possible. If we were stranded on the beach, we'd have to wait. Sooner or later, we'd get a helicopter or somebody would come in and extract us. Next slide. So you get a general feeling of what the hovercraft is there and how it operates. So now you know, I'm not Senator Mike Lee, and I'm not a SEAL, and I'm not a Marine. Next slide, please. And there you go. Now, I want you to read this. This is real. Blessed are the children, for they shall inherit the national debt. That seems like a joke, doesn't it? This was my daughter Holly's fortune cookie Saturday at a Chinese restaurant. Do you think we're in trouble? This country is in big, big trouble. Next slide. Okay. Now we've got that out of the way, we can get to what you came for. Now, the first thing I normally tell people normally at this point is, if you don't support the Constitution of the United States, you probably want to leave now, because you're not going to like what I'm going to say from this point forward. If you don't support the Constitution of the United States in its entirety, shame on you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether the Republicans are right or whether the Democrats are right. What I am going to tell you is that anybody who doesn't support the Constitution of the United States is wrong. And they should be ashamed themselves. But that's where the problem is. We've got Republicans who run as Democrats, Democrats who run as Republicans. Nobody knows who's whom. And why do they do that? They do it because they want to get elected. They don't care what they're going to do for America. They don't care how much damage they're going to do to America. All they care about is, I want to get elected and I want to make some money. Why do you think so many of them are wealthy by the time they leave office? I've been involved with politics for a lot of years. I'm the only guy, so I've been told, unless somebody can prove me wrong, I've been told I'm the only guy in the history of the United States to run for a seat in Congress while on active duty in the military. They told me I couldn't do it. I laughed and said, watch. Show me something that says I can't. They couldn't, I did. I was announced a winner by 26 votes. After 3 weeks of recounting, I lost by 100 on $4,000. People ask me all the time. The other guy I've heard anywhere from $300,000 to $3 million. I don't know. People ask me, how'd you do that? Well, I did something really unique. I went out and I worked. I stood on the street corner every morning and every evening waving at cars. I knocked on over 30,000 doors myself. I made over 40,000 phone calls myself. I did everything I could to go out and give my message to the public. And you know what? They responded. Because that's what people are wanting. I don't think anybody in the Obama administration knows what they have done now. Now, there were years ago, I'd stand back and I'd say, 5 years ago, I'd look at you and I'd say, I'm a wacko, right-wing nut for saying what I'm saying. Because I thought about that about other people when I heard them say this stuff. Who knew that those guys were right? Who knew? But I'm going to tell you, Obama should have listened to the Japanese. They've awakened a sleeping giant. I go all over speaking on my own dime, talking to everybody that I can. I've had 25,000 people. I've had 5 of the drunkest women you've ever seen beat up on me in a pizza parlor. I didn't care. If they would shut up long enough, I'd sit there and talk between them. I didn't care. We are in a bad situation. I'm going to say something a lot of people won't stand up here and say to you. And I'm not some right-wing wacko nut. Just in case you didn't know, Barack Obama is a communist. He is. He's a communist. Everybody in his background pushed him toward communism. His mentors were card-carrying communists. What seated president would put self-confessing communist in his cabinet if he was not a communist sympathizer? He would never do that because it would be political suicide, normally. But he doesn't see it that way because he doesn't care. He's at a point now where second term. He's been reelected. We heard him tell the Russian president that. He can do what he wants now. All he needed was that second term, and that's what he's going after. No one is going to tell me that his goal is not to absolutely collapse America. And who do we have fighting for us? Anybody? You got one good senator here, and we got a couple of people here in Texas. I tell people on a regular basis, and people are hearing me say this, so you might hear this now. I'm seeing it on television, I'm hearing it on the radio, I'm seeing it on Twitter. Texas is America's Alamo. Believe me when I tell you, the entire country is looking for Texas. Texas has 38 electoral votes. What happens if we lose Texas? If we lose Texas, we will never win another national election. Period. We will not win another national election. So we have to save Texas at all cost. We have to save Texas. And how do we do that? It's really a simple thing. He's doing there. Why do you think he's spending all this money on people? Why do you think he's giving out billions of dollars in free cell phones? Mitt Romney was right. Mitt Romney said, a certain group of people that will vote for him no matter what because he gives. So I saw Mitt Romney yesterday on TV, and I supported Mitt. He wasn't my first choice, but he was a nominee, and I said, okay, that's my nominee, that's what I'm going with. I saw Mitt yesterday, and I was so disappointed because he's still doing the political correctness thing. And I said, just stop. The election's over with. You lost. It's okay to say it. You're rich. You're a millionaire. What are you going to do to you, Mitt? Say it. They did support Barack Obama because he gave them everything. We know that. We know that. The more he gave, the better off they were going to be. And they're still looking for the handouts. We need somebody on our side to do something for us. I tell everybody, every group I speak to, you got to start now. Everybody in this room, it's going to take every one of you. If you don't believe it, America is at war. And I'm not talking about Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm talking about right here. Fighting for our very survival. Fighting for the survival of our Constitution. We're fighting for freedom today.